You know that moment when you sit down to do something useful, within about 4 minutes, your brain opens up a full legal investigation into your life. You're meant to write about the thing and send the email, make the call, record the video, or do whatever noble little task that you promised yourself that you'd do this morning. And then when you still had hope and caffeine, then your mind walks in with a clipboard. Hey, what if this is rubbish? What if people think you're full of it? What if it never works? What if you're behind? What if you wasted years thinking about all of this and still can't make it useful? And the worst one, what if you're kidding yourself? That one hits differently, doesn't it? Because it doesn't feel like anxiety, it feels like the truth. It feels like the grown-up part of you has finally entered the room and looked at your calendar, your bank account, and those unfinished projects, your body, your age, and your pile of notes and said, mate, we need to have a serious talk. And maybe you do. That's where rumination is so convincing. It usually has a little bit of truth to it. Maybe you're avoiding something. Maybe you do need to be more focused. Maybe your plan's too vague. Maybe opening 6 tabs and calling it research is, legally speaking, not the same as building a life. But then the mind goes too far. It stops helping you see the problem and starts making the problem feel like who you are. This is where rumination becomes dangerous. And so rumination, I think, is fear dressed as intelligence. Rumination feels useful because it borrows the voice of responsibility. And that's why when someone says here, just stop overthinking, it's just such useless advice. If it were that easy, then we'd all be emotionally free and probably much better hydrated. People don't ruminate because they're stupid. They ruminate because something matters to them. You care about not failing. You care about not hurting people. You care about not looking like an idiot. You care about not wasting your life. You care about not waking up one day and realizing you spent the last 10 years preparing to start. There's often something good underneath that loop, and the anxious part of you is not trying to ruin your life, it thinks that it's protecting your life. The problem is the price. At some point, being careful becomes avoidance. Thinking it through becomes delay. Having high standards becomes not publishing. Wanting to get it right becomes staying silent. Being realistic becomes letting your fear write your future in advance. And then the mind says, good, we're safe. No, you're stuck. And the really cruel part is that it feels like wisdom while it's happening. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it puts on the glasses, opens a spreadsheet, and calls it self-analysis. Here is the idea that can change the whole game. Thought is not a fact. A thought is a claim. That sounds simple, but most of us don't live that way. We live life that every thought that hits hard must be true. I'm failing. I'm behind. They think I'm stupid. I should be further ahead. This will never work. There must be something wrong with me. These thoughts arrive with emotional force, and the body reacts before we can even have a chance to check them. Chest tightens, stomach drops, shoulders tense, phone comes out, email gets open, the fridge gets visited for absolutely no medical reason, and then we treat feeling as proof. I feel anxious, so this must be dangerous. I feel ashamed, so I must have done something shameful. I feel hopeless, so nothing must be possible. A strong feeling does not prove a thought is true. It certainly proves that a thought has emotional power, but that difference matters. Your mind can make a sentence feel like reality. That does not make it reality. It makes it a sentence with good lighting. And once you can see it as a sentence, then you can test it. For example, like if someone walked into your house and said, your car's been stolen, you'd check the driveway. You would not immediately sell the house, change the name, move to Tasmania, and start a new life as a man who makes wooden spoons. You'd check the driveway. When your mind says you're failing, many of us don't check the driveway. We panic, we obey, we collapse, and we ruminate. The thought becomes the weather. It fills your whole room and affects your body, your choices, your tone, your posture, and your ability to speak honestly and your ability to act. And we forget to do the basic thing. Check. Is it true? What's the evidence? What else could be true? What small test could I run? That's the move. You treat the thought like a hypothesis, not a command or a prophecy, not a moral verdict. It's a hypothesis, something your mind has offered under certain conditions. And let's be honest, some of those conditions are not ideal. Low sleep, too much coffee, no exercise, too much scrolling, a half-eaten packet of biscuits nearby. It's not exactly the supreme court of human reason. So before you obey the thought, check the driveway. The 3-step test. Here's the method. Name the thought, check the evidence, and run a tiny experiment. That's it. The method has to be simple when you're anxious. Your brain does not want a 47-step framework. It wants the fire alarm to stop. Step 1, name the thought. Not the polite version, not the LinkedIn version, the real one. Don't write, I'm experiencing uncertainty about my future. Nobody talks like that unless you've been trapped inside a corporate values document. Write the painful sentence. I'm scared I left it too late. I'm scared that people will see I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared this thing I care about will never become real. I'm scared I've spent years thinking instead of acting on it. That's useful. Painful, but it's useful. Step 2, check the evidence. What supports this thought? What doesn't support it? What facts am I ignoring? What would I say to someone I loved if they had this thought? Step 3, run a tiny experiment. Like if your mind says people will think this is obvious, send it to 3 people and ask what part was useful. Your mind says I look stupid if I ask that question. Ask one clear question and watch what happens. If your mind says if I stop worrying, I'll become careless, maybe make a simple plan. Stop worrying for 1 hour and see if the house catches fire. Tiny experiments beat endless internal debates. And rumination feeds on guesses. Experiments give you data. For me, this often shows up around perceptual. I'll sit down to work on it. Because it matters to me, my mind gets serious very quickly. If I can't turn this into something real, maybe I've been wasting my time. And that sentence hurts. Goes straight to the chest. And I can feel the shame attached to it. Like it's not drag movie shame. Heavy, private, slightly sick feeling. Maybe you're not who you thought you were. So I name the thought properly. Not in its clean version, the real one. Like I'm scared the thing that I care about won't become real. And that would make the last few years feel embarrassing. That's a much more honest sentence. Then I check the evidence. Is there evidence that I need to make it more real? Yes, absolutely. Ideas need proof. They need products, posts, videos, offers, conversations, tools, and real people getting real value. So nobody gets points for having a beautiful private philosophy and notion. And at the same point, reality wants a receipt. It wants purchase. But is it true that I've wasted my time? No, that goes too far. I've written, I've tested, I've built tools, I've had conversations, I've helped people in their thinking more clearly, found language of things that I used to live as fog. So the more accurate thought becomes, this matters to me and I need more proof that it's becoming real. And that doesn't mean that I wasted my time. It means the next step is to create evidence. Thought still has pressure in it. Good. Some pressure is useful, but it gives me a job instead of a beating. I think this is where most of the suffering lives. The real problem might be practical. The draft is unclear. The offer needs work. The conversation needs to happen, or the plan is too vague. The email needs to be sent, and the mind turns it into identity. I'm useless. I'm behind. I'm not good enough. I always do this. This proves something about me. And that move is devastating, because one practical problem becomes an identity wound. You stop solving it and you start defending yourself against it. You seek reassurance. You replay everything in your head and call it thinking. If the problem is this draft is unclear, you can fix that. If the problem is this draft proves that I'm worthless, now you're fighting a ghost in the keyboard. That is why testing thoughts matters. It brings the problem back down to earth. And it turns failing into I didn't finish the draft. It turns I'm useless into I avoided the call. It turns I'm behind into I need to choose the next useful step. Specific problems could be worked with, but global self-attacks just sit on your chest like a damp Labrador. Heavy, unhelpful, and weirdly committed. The replacement thought has to be believable. It's where people in CBT get it wrong. They think the point is to replace a negative thought with a positive one. So a thought says like, this might fail, and they answer, everything will be amazing because I'm powerful and magnetic. No, your brain is scared, not stupid. It rejected it immediately. A useful replacement thought has to be believable. It has to be more accurate, not more cheerful. So the painful thought says everything will go wrong. Some things may go wrong, but I can handle the next step. The painful thought says, I'm useless. The better thought says, I made a mistake and I need to repair it. And that does not make me useless. The better thought says, I feel behind because I'm comparing myself to an imaginary timeline. The next useful step is still available. That's what we want. Not fake confidence, not emotional wallpaper, a thought that is accurate enough to believe and useful enough to act on. It has to put 100% lie to the old belief. That's the standard. Believable, accurate, and useful. If the new thought doesn't help you move, it's just nicer furniture in the same cage. Untested thoughts don't just stay in your head. They become your life. If you believe I'll look stupid and you stay silent. If you believe I must be certain, you'll delay. If you believe I'm behind, you panic and lose the next hour. If you believe this proves I'm not good enough, you turn a normal problem into a self-worth injury. A thought becomes a feeling, and a feeling becomes behavior. Behavior becomes a pattern, and a pattern starts to look like your personality. And then one day you say, this is just how I am. Well, maybe shock of that isn't moral failure, right? This is a mechanism. I'm just a mechanic explaining how I think it works. So once you see the mechanism, you've got somewhere to intervene. Name the thought, check the evidence, run the experiment, check it again. That's how you stop a sentence letting it drive your life from the backseat. I think make the mind show how it's working. The aim is to not stop thinking. Good luck with that. The mind just produces material all day. Some of it's useful, some of it's protective, some of it's old fear with just a fresh haircut, some of it's dramatic enough to deserve its own soundtrack. Let the mind speak, then make it show its workings. A thought is a claim. Claims could be tested, Once you learn to test those private senses running your day, you become harder to deceive from the inside. It's not to guarantee a better outcome, it just removes one more excuse for staying trapped inside a thought that you never properly checked. Sometimes that's enough to move. Best to you, Chris out.